Right now on Tech Radio, Samsung is in the money. Or are they?
Hi, I'm Artemis. I am a computer-generated AI voice, and you're listening to Tech Radio.
Every week online, we bring you the latest in tech from Ireland and around the world. This week, we have new Pixel phones, job cuts at Microsoft, and will someone please think of the data centres during our current heat wave? Plus, we'll find out where the actual return on investment in Gen AI is with Denis Hannigan, AI and data lead at Accenture.
This is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
I'm Dusty. Joining me as always is our editor-in-chief, Niall Kitson, coming to you live from the oven today.
From the oven. Tell me, do you have any particular gadgets or gizmos protecting you from the heat wave at the moment?
Yeah, it's called a window. And not the Microsoft.
Damn it, I was
type.
going to say that. You took my line. You took my line.
Do you know what? It's one of those things that you rarely do is we have the windows at the back of the house open and at the front of the house. Just trying to get a bit of breeze through, like, you know. But
yeah.
no,
that's
we don't have
trick.
air conditioning. Why would we?
Get it through breeze. It really makes a difference.
There you go. Listen,
that's my bit of home improvement knowledge for today.
Let's talk about tech. We opened up with Samsung. They're in the money, but they're not in the money. So tell me about the profits firstly.
Okay, well, this is kind of interesting because I look at the headline and then you went, aha, au contraire. Because you look at any headline that says profits up 1,800%, you're thinking, well, hey, good times are here again. You're saying no.
No, I'm saying no, because their profit has gone up incredibly by 20 times or something like that. All of the orders are coming in for AI and everybody wants chips and data. As we know, there's a big shortage of everything. But as a result of that, Samsung profits are up like, I think, what was it? You had the number?
1,800%.
1,800%. Unbelievable. That's 20 times or something like that? Whatever it is. Anyway, it's a massive. Their share price has gone down like 5%. Or maybe even 10%.
It went down 10%.
10%. There you go.
It's like you announce up 1,800%, you lose 100 billion in your valuation.
This is what you got to think about, kind of shares and whatever. It's never based on what's happening today. All right. So things are kicking off again this week with the US and Iran and whatever, but the stock markets aren't really doing anything about it. You would think that they'd be like, oh no, Strait of Hormuz closed. Da, da, da. No, because the stock markets are always thinking about not what's happening now, what's happening next. So it's Samsung. Yeah. Great. The profits are up so much for AI chips and stuff like that. But we think what's going to happen next is that the bottom is going to fall out of the market and you're not going to have those profits in the next 3 to 6 months. Therefore, you could be looking at a serious loss or even the company being in trouble or oversubscribed to one particular line or whatever. It could be bad news and therefore the share price is down.
Okay, well, let's look at what's driving the share price. It's all to do with RAM chips, powering data centers. Now, here's a wrinkle, right? Shareholders were promised a certain level of performance on their RAM chips. It actually didn't reach that level, so it didn't quite hit the forecasts, which is why you have the valuation down. However, it makes you wonder. An awful lot of the AI build-outs we're hearing at the moment are from massive data centers, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. Do you think an awful lot of this is chips that are being pre-sold on the assumption that we will have massive data centers actually full and actually being used instead of large buildings that are only half full, employ maybe 2 people and aren't being used? Because that seems to be what's going on with Facebook with their pivot into cloud services.
Well, there is the reality, both people, and maybe that's where Samsung's share price is going down, because people are saying, okay, this sounds like a dream, full data centers, everybody's going AI crazy, but we're starting to see the reality, like with Facebook, where they're not using those data centers to their full capacity. So therefore, the demand is not there. And I think what's happening in the world is we're getting used to AI now, and a lot of people are just not paying for it. Now, if they're not paying for it, why would you use it? And a lot of people who
too.
are paying for it are starting to moan about it. Particularly, we've had a case with Claude who don't tell you how many tokens it is that you get with a subscription, and they just seem to move the goalposts all the time. That's really annoying customers as well.
Well, that, and it is getting to the stage where people have been told to use so many tokens, particularly, of course, developers, to the point where, yes, indeed, the goalposts are being moved on capacity, but also the quality just isn't there, and it's working out cheaper just to have your own developers in-house.
Yep, there is that. You were going to say?
Do you know, in manufacturing, they called it, I think Ford called them greybeards, which is like people that had, experienced engineers, right? Who were let go and replaced by AI. It emerged the AI was not as good, was not good at doing those jobs that the greybeards were good at. And guess what? They had to rehire a load of people.
That's interesting, isn't it? And we've seen it before, and you see like kind of, and I think they're probably being ignored. Older gentlemen who are kind of going, yeah, I can see, it's building up, blah, blah, blah. And it was like this, kind of whatever, 30 years ago, and it all went down south. And I think a lot of people in the world are kind of going, no, this time it's different. It won't be like that. What do old men know? What do the greybeards know?
Sure.
It'll be interesting. Anyway, I have a theory, but I'll share it with you later because I like my tin hat and my conspiracy theories. Samsung shares down anyway. I reckon it's to do with the fact that the markets are looking going, this AI thing ain't going to last. I think another reason could be there's some leaks out about the Samsung Flip. I think they're going to announce it next month. I can't remember the exact date. But from what we see is that there's some screenshots have gone out or been leaked. It's more or less the same. There's no real change. There's more AI going into these phones, but other than that, it's like.
Okay, I'm gonna make a forecast. Right,
we
are going to see very, very little change and a price hike.
Oh, absolutely. 100% of it is. Sure, Apple came out and said price, and then almost everybody came out after them and said, yeah, me too.
I think everybody is of the sort of, they're prepping everybody for €100 price increase. And it's all because of the cost of RAM.
That's what it is. And
that's all it is.
RAM is being sucked up because of AI. However, we do have a new phone out in the world this week, and it's the new Pixel.
Well, we don't. We're looking at an August 12th reveal. Okay. So what are we going to get? Yeah, well, guess what? We're getting a price increase. They're also discontinuing one of the, they're discontinuing the 128 gig storage option on smaller phones. The 11 and Pixel 11 Pro will apparently start at €1,000 and €1,200 respectively.
Oof.
Now, bear in mind, the Pixel was meant to be vanilla. Here you go. Android as, with no extra layers. Go for it, devs. This is your toy. I think, the Pixels have evolved to be a proper brand in their own right. If I was to get an Android phone, I'd go for a Pixel because, comparatively little bloatware, which is always a selling point. So on one level, it's kind of nice to see them getting up there on price, because it shows a bit of confidence. On the other level, still pretty spicy.
It's nice to see them getting up there in price. What are you like, you?
I know.
Rolling around in money. Is that how you keep yourself cool these days? Taking a lot of €50 notes and fanning yourself. Is that what you're doing? Is it?
I will be hanging on to my Pixel phone until, the cover falls off it.
Now, do you know, I have a similar kind of a story in that I have a smartphone that's about maybe 5 years old and the battery was starting to go. And I love new tech and I love new gadgets, all right? And I went, time took great, might as well get the phone done. Blah. And then I was kind of thinking, I'm going to spend like probably 1,500 quid on a new phone. What is it actually going to do other than be bigger, faster, farther, whatever? And I came to the decision... I said, I'm just going to get a new battery and replace the battery. So I replaced the battery. I got a new cover for it and I bought a new screen protector on it. darn thing felt like a brand new phone. All right.
There you go.
It's zipping along. It's doing everything I want. There's no lag. It's not slow. It does it, I just, browse the internet, check emails, social media, WhatsApp messages. It does all. I don't play games on my phone or take videos. I'm not a high end user like that. Does exactly what I need until I tapped it literally, I think it was Tuesday. And whatever, I'm sure it wasn't the tap that did it, but all of a sudden a go fast green line just came all the way down the screen. I'm sure you can see it there.
Oh no.
Oh yeah. So it's kind of like, the screen has gone. All right. So I just have this green line all the way down the screen. Now it's fine. It's functional. It's usable and all that kind of stuff. But I'm kind of thinking, will I replace it? So I looked at the options for replacing it. It's going to cost anywhere between 120 and maybe 350 quid to get it replaced.
Okay.
Okay. Whatever. All right. Yeah. Or I can go for a brand new phone. And I was immediately looking at the Samsung S26 Ultra because that's just how I rock.
Well, you're a Samsung guy. Yeah.
I'm a Samsung guy. All right. Give me the biggest and the most memory and the fastest and the one with the pen and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, it's over $1,000. I think it could be 12. I can't remember the exact price. Certainly over $1,000 anyway. What do I need that for? Do you know what I mean? I'm looking at WhatsApp messages. Yeah. Why am I spending that kind of money? So now I'm kind of just thinking in my head, I think I might just get an S26 Plus, which I think I can get for like $750 or something like that. So
pre-loved, yeah.
No, I think that's new with Mobi.
Oh, okay.
Is the name of the website. They're a Dutch company based in the Netherlands, and they ship like within 24 hours. And I've bought a few phones off them for various people, and they're great. So no, brand new, 750 quid. But it's just funny how there's a little bit of things with you and I would imagine we're not the only ones where it's a case of, okay, new phone. Well, what is actually new? All they've done in the last couple of years is, hey, we've got AI. But now I think the world is kind of going, yeah, so what? Do you know what I mean? We're over the initial, wow, AI is amazing. And now we're living in a world of, well, the AI may not be as great as you think it is.
Well, do you know what? I mean, my favorite ads, I'm bumping this up to, favorite ads of all time, were the Super Bowl ads this year for Anthropic. Where you remember, they were four ads. They were absolutely brilliant, and they were poking fun at OpenAI, at the forced positivity, all that kind of thing. But now it's kind of like, well, they're all like that. They're all like that.
Yeah,
and I don't like interacting with that.
No, and I'm getting really annoyed. Everything I use now has got AI built into it, where I never asked for it, and I'm paying for it. Like the Office package we use with Google is kind of like, oh, yeah, all these new AI features that we've put in there. Like, that means we're bumping up your subscription by X euro per year. And it's like, well, hang on. I didn't ask for those things, and I certainly don't use most of them. Microsoft is exactly the same. Oh, you can use Copilot for this and the other. No, I don't use it.
Yeah.
Why am I paying extra for it? And it's the same with the mobile phones. I think a lot of people are kind of like, yeah, that was great. And there's a lot of people who don't like AI.
Yeah. I mean, if I want to use AI for something, I'll go to Anthropic. Some people go to AI, OpenAI, that's fine. But I'll go to Anthropic. If I don't want anything, I don't want AI built into anything else. If I want Microsoft Word, I just want Microsoft Word. I don't want cloud storage. I don't want anything else. And what is it they say? 80% of your customers only use 20% of your features.
There you go. And it happens all the time with, I don't know, with how many, because companies need to grow. So, they get their core service, they finesse their core service, they get really good at their core service, and then there's nowhere left to go but add in new features. Do you know what really annoys me when I'm using Microsoft? And this is not Microsoft Online in a web browser, right? I open the Word, okay? I open Word, the application, sitting on my computer, and up there at the top of the screen is upgrade your package. And it's like, I already pay for my package. Why is this ad on this software, which I have and downloaded on, is telling me to upgrade? I find that really annoying. Really annoying. And the other fact is, like, the AI, it keeps saying it can do this, this, and this, and then half the time it can't.
Do you know what?
Thing I've come across.
Do you know what? this time next year, we'll be on Windows 3.1. Just out of spite.
What would you want to do
just
that
find
for? Go onto
something
Linux.
basic.
Linux. Get onto Linux.
Well,
it's amazing, the distros now.
That will also work. What's the Irish one? It's Zorin, isn't it?
Zorin, yeah, Zorin Industries, just like the James Bond movie, like
just like the James Bond movie.
But it is, like, you know, I think it's fantastic. Anyway, other news this week. Microsoft. Now, this is kind of where this whole AI thing is going. It's leading to a whole load of job losses, both with the tech companies who are going, well, the layoffs are nothing to do with AI when we all know that they are, and then there's other companies who are using AI that are not in tech, but because they're able to use those features, are laying people off. Microsoft have more job cuts. They're letting go 4,000 people across the world, about 60 in Ireland. Interesting statement released by Microsoft, effectively saying, we're not letting you go because of AI. By the way, please use AI. Yeah.
That was the tone of it, not an exact quote. But yeah, the bulk of the layoffs, it's just over 3,000, is in the gaming sector. So it's Xbox, it's Blizzard, it's Bethesda, you know, it's all Bungie. It's all these sort of household names that are being affected. Some, you know, studios, I think they're being spun out. A couple are having the size of their teams reduced. It's it's a bit of a bloodbath in gaming. And there is the sort of train of thought of, you know, why exactly is Microsoft in gaming at the moment? Because the bits that are making it money are the business services. It's software as a service, it's cloud storage, it's business functions. If you're a consumer, you're not having a fantastic user experience at the moment. But I mean, Xbox is a great service. But Microsoft might go, do you know what? Like, I mean, this doesn't align with what we're good at the moment. This just doesn't. It's a thumb. It's a thumb sticking out. You know.
Yeah.
I mean. Personally, I think it's great for companies to diversify. It means you're not sort of too reliant on any one thing. But I guess for a company the size of Microsoft, you need a certain level of diversification that Xbox just can't offer. Will it go out on its own? No. Will it be downsized? They are downsizing it. How bad can it get? That's the interesting thing. When we start seeing games no longer being released as Xbox exclusives, then we know something has gone very wrong.
Other big tech companies who are not announcing good news this week, OpenAI were making all kinds of commitments to the UK, and we realised that maybe they weren't quite as good as it looked.
Well, I mean, this is part of the Stargate data center rollout / plan. OpenAI sort of leading it, Meta involved in it, Oracle, a technology partner in it, billions and billions of dollars to be invested in infrastructure. It is not working out so well so far. Elon Musk is not a fan. He basically says the money isn't there to do it. SoftBank certainly thinks there is there, and that, you know, they're bankrolling it. However, here's something quite interesting that has happened in the UK. OpenAI said, well, look, we've got a potential investment here of £30 billion. This is going to be fantastic. And they, identified a site for a data center that they said, you know, this is going to be, and this is a direct quote, a major step forward in US-UK technology partnership. Great idea. Okay, the plans were announced in April. And guess what? OpenAI hasn't actually visited the site in question. And the 30 billion that was being touted by them and the government, well, 20% of that was just kind of theoretical. 20 billion of it was just kind of theoretical. Ooh. So where is this money actually going to come from? Who knows? Was this an exercise in hype building? Yeah, kinda. It's not looking good. Yeah. I'm not impressed.
I don't even know if it was hype building. Maybe it was just kind of, let's get something across the line by any means possible. Anyway, you and I are only conjecture. We've absolutely no idea. We're throwing around accusations that we can't back up. So just take it with a pinch of salt. That's OpenAI. Oh, you mentioned Mr. Musk. All right. SpaceX. I know you're keeping an eye on you. You must, I'm guessing the way you talk about this, that you have put probably about 100,000 into SpaceX shares, or you were considering it at one stage and glad you didn't. I don't know which it is, but you're keeping a very close eye on those shares.
I was forever glad I didn't, because we went through the ways that SpaceX had the rules change on the NASDAQ to make sure it could be added to the index funds as quickly as possible. And, for us, we were talking about it. SpaceX were saying they were very much relying on retail investors. And it looked like, a pretty good start. The actual opening price was $150. It actually went up to above $200 at one point.
Very
We are now down to $148.26. That's below the debut price, but still above the IPO price of $135. What's going to happen to these shares? Well, a lot of people are stuck with them, and they're not going to make money from them for a long time, because SpaceX is not going to make money for a long time, because we know that it relies on public contracts to keep the rocket business afloat. The social media company loses money, and the Starlink makes money. And XAI loses a lot of money. But I think they'll start making it back through leasing out compute to Anthropic.
No, I don't think so. I think from the IPO and the documents, they're saying they're putting pretty much almost everything that they have into XAI. And if XAI doesn't work, I think the whole thing is just going to go kaput. Now, I mean, it won't go kaput, because what they'll do then is they'll split them off into individual companies or something like that. As you say, SpaceX is kind of doing okay. Starlink is doing particularly well. Social media is a dead loss. And I think XAI could also end up being a dead loss. But that's what's happening in the world at the moment. Everybody is racing at all costs to be the king of AI. At all costs. It doesn't matter how much it costs. They would just get the money from wherever. They'll put everything they have in. They'll borrow it. They'll try and get it from government. They did it, whatever. All in. All right. Because you can imagine, whoever does become the king of AI would be the next Google. Can you imagine? Whoever's the next, look at Google, how big it is now and how influential it is. Imagine if any one of those companies became the next Google.
Yeah.
Wow. There's a lot of money in that. So I can understand why they're putting it in there. But is it going to work? Is it worth the money? Is it going to turn around? How long did it take Google to get as big as they were? Because Google started in late 90s. No, mid to late 96. Wasn't somewhere around there? And I would say it took minimum 10 years for them to become like the default.
Yeah. I don't know. One thing I do find quite interesting, that may or may not accelerate the coming AI crash, is how DeepSeek is showing how cheaply it can be done. You do not need to go the expensive route of Anthropic or OpenAI or even Google or Microsoft. DeepSeek is a fraction of the price, and they are now developing their own chips as well.
Yeah.
So I think even companies in the States are looking at DeepSeek and going, do you know what? Let's just go with DeepSeek. We don't need the expensive models to go with things. We just need something open source, and let's do that.
And that's what's happened before. Like the US will develop all these things and be an innovator, if you like, but then China comes along and they're able to systemize it and build massive factories and churn out the stuff. And I think Apple probably learned that, and that, all right, well, we'll innovate in the States, but God damn it, we're going to build it in China.
Sure.
You know? So it's the same with AI. They're developing it in the States at huge cost. But then China's going to come in and go and do it on the cheap. And I think the market will collapse. The US side of AI will collapse because of that. And here's my prediction. Seeing as you're making predictions, I'll do my own. All right. I think the crash could happen this year. All right. Or within the next 12 months. And I think what will happen is that China will invade Taiwan.
Gosh, you're into getting Game of Thrones territory here.
Well, it's kind of China has long been making moves on Taiwan. Taiwan is where all of these chips are being made. If China invade them, do you know what I mean? Everybody else will just have to try and defend the island. And that's going to cause absolute catastrophe. Absolute catastrophe. That's my prediction on and particularly, do you know what I mean? If the Americans are so busy with Iran and stuff like that and all the things that are going on around the world and all that kind of stuff, I won't call it a prediction, but that's my feeling. And when it happens, then sayonara, game over for a couple of years.
Do you want to put some money on that? Do you want to put your wallet where your mouth is?
Yeah, I'll put 10 of my SpaceX shares. How's that?
Buying the dip and all that.
50 cent. That'll be about 50 cent. There you go. Listen, let's wrap up this week's good weather. It's absolutely brilliant. Ishka Aaron has come out, though, talking about data centres, and the Central Statistics Office has come out talking about data centres this week. What are Ishka Aaron saying?
Well, I mean, it's a little bit of banter I found online. Of course, the weather that we're having at the moment is nice and very small doses, but we know that it's coming from a very dark place. This is climate change. We're kind of stuck with it for the moment, and data centers, as we know, are particularly thirsty beasts. So whenever a hosepipe ban comes along, and Ishka Aaron have issued a warning for people to not take baths, maybe decide against taking the hose pipe to your lawn, all these things. People are going, well, hang on, why should we change our behavior? You got data centers up the road absolutely ruining our water supply, just taking as much as they want. Why should we have to alter our behavior? So for the record, in 2024, apparently 810 million litres were being used by data centres, 0.13 of the nation's public water supply. We are in much more danger of our crumbling national infrastructure because we lose something like 30% of our water due to leaks, pipe leakage. So, if you're looking to sort of make data centers a bit of a demon out of this is probably not the hill to die on. It's not so much the quantity of water they're using, so much as the quality of what they're leaving behind is really what to worry about. But another little bit of trivia, if you're in the Dublin area, 88% of operational data centers are up with us, up in the capital, which means that if something's going to go wrong in the Dublin area, so if something's going to go wrong, it's going to hit Dublin first, which I'm sure the rest of the country will be only too happy to watch.
There was a really interesting article. I know that when you say that Irish data centres account for 0.13% of the nation's public water supply, and it sounds very small, but that is only taking into account the actual amount of water they use at the actual data centre. The article that I was reading said you also then have to take into account the amount of water that is used at the power plants in order to generate the electricity that is powering those data centers. And then there's all kinds of other water uses that go with it. And they were saying there's many, many multiples of that. So it could be, the claim could be that up to 5% of Irish water is being used in connection with data centres. But electricity then is a completely different animal altogether. The CSO, we mentioned it last week, CSO came out officially this week and said that 23% of national electricity in Ireland was used by data centres. 23%. And that's the same amount of electricity as every single household in the country Your apartment, my house, wherever we all live, uses 23% of national electricity. All right. The other 23% by data centers, and then the rest, I presume, is used by large institutions, factories, industry, whatever.
Well, Dusty, the lesson from all this is that in order to save the country, no Spotify for anyone for a week.
Okay, no Spotify and no showers. All right.
No Spotify and no showers. You'll be fine.
On that note, let's leave it there for now. Niall, as always, thanks for keeping us up to date with the news.
Share the knowledge and invite a friend to listen. Search Apple, Spotify, or YouTube for Tech Radio Ireland.
The more we see how companies are using AI, the more we know how difficult it is to prove how changes to the way we work are turning into profit. Denis Hannigan is AI and data lead at Accenture, and he spoke with Niall Kitson about what businesses are getting wrong about generative AI.
Denis, there's two interesting stats from the report that we're going to be mentioning throughout this conversation. And it seems to be there's a minority of Irish companies investing in training for generative AI. And there's a minority of companies reporting any discernible return on investment for generative AI. Is it possible to disentangle those two results, or does one naturally follow the other?
Two really interesting angles, Niall, that are alluded to in the report for sure. But maybe just before delving into that, I might just do a little bit of a step back and set some of the context for the report, because it's the second time we've looked at the level of AI adoption across workers and across enterprises in the Irish economy. And really excited to do so again recently on the basis that obviously agentic has had such an impact over the course of the last 6 to 12 months. And the crux at a high level of what the report is calling out, and we'll delve into your call outs in a moment, is that on one hand, we've seen a really rapid adoption of AI, Gen AI specifically, from an individual perspective. And the level of usage by individuals in their day-to-day work has increased 3x over the course of the last 24 months, even higher now. But on the other side, at an organizational level, that same pace of adoption hasn't yet taken effect. And there's some strong stats that bear that out. But some individuals, for instance, are saying that only 28% have seen a process or a workflow that has been substantially changed with AI. And what the report really delves into is that gap between the rapid adoption at an individual personal level, but the slower adoption from an organization standpoint. And as a consequence of that gap, we're seeing that the economic potential, the prize, the productivity, and some of the growth potential is not yet tapped into. And so that just sets out a little bit of the narrative in terms of what the report is delving into. The specifics that you alluded to around the lack of training and the lack of training and the lack of the limited view on return on investment. I think there's multiple dimensions to that. I think what the report clearly calls out is that there are a small number of organizations who are doing things differently and who are driving AI, Gen AI, agentic capabilities into production, and doing so in a manner that is driving material returns of investment. But they are in the minority. It's in and around 10% of Irish organizations are in that space. And some of the attributes and learnings when we look more closely at those organizations is that they are tackling exactly the areas that you pointed to, so skills being one, but also looking at the same time, actually, at some of their core foundations from a data tech perspective, and indeed their work processes and how they execute work. So it's, I suppose, for those organizations that are really generating return at this moment, we see that it is a mixture of capabilities and focus areas that they're operating and prioritizing to enable them to use this tool effectively at this moment.
I think one of the kind of fascinating things I've seen is how workflows have been kind of revolutionized by AI. Do you find that that's another kind of barrier to adoption, is finding a way to reimagine workflows that make sure people don't feel that their job is being threatened, more so that it is being reimagined?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really good shade. And I think when we look at adoption and more broadly deployment of agentic AI and Gen AI, I think you can view it as really a systems challenge, because the system to which many organizations are based around, be it the governance, the skills, the ways of working, processes, data, the systems and so on, they're largely geared and orientated to work for a human in the loop, a human first model. And what we're in the mode of now is bringing this fast moving tech, which is doubling in capability every 7 months from a agentic perspective. So it's going exceptionally fast and it's unlocking a whole new potential, but trying to stitch that into an organization that isn't necessarily operating at the same speed. And therein lies some of the challenges and complexity around the adoption that you're alluding to. And there are multiple facets again in terms of how that can be unlocked when we look at those organizations that are doing well. But I think it starts actually with leadership and having the right focus in terms of trying to solve a specific workflow or a specific area in the first instance, and trying to bring people, the skill sets, the data, that specific cohort together to try and solve a specific issue with a targeted KPI in the first instance, learning from that, and then driving that out across the organization. I suppose there are examples where if you try and go too broad and tackle too many specific issues or areas at the same time, then adoption can indeed be a challenge.
There's also the issue of adoption when it comes to what kind of AI you're interested in using, whether you want to use Gen AI for creating a marketing campaign, or if you want to go with something more customer facing and develop an AI agent. So the problem for me anyway that it presents to management is that you can't have a proponent of AI as such. You need to break it up into smaller pieces. So you would have some guy championing, okay, Gen AI is, would generate, efficiencies, would potentially deliver good ROI, versus the guy at the customer end sort of going, look, if we invest in an agent either on top of or instead, this is where we're going to get more money from. So is this a problem that you're seeing as well, that it's not just introducing AI, it's the kind of AI?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think what is borne out in the report, and certainly a learning that we see day to day on the ground as well, is starting with the technology in terms of what either Gen AI or agentic can do will, to an extent, be the scenario where you've a hammer looking for a nail. And, what we're seeing, a lot of organizations who are moving ahead in this space, and what they're focusing on is actually where the money, the value, the opportunity is, first instance. And what is that specific business workflow or problem or a team potentially where there is an opportunity to improve that's material to the organization, but not too big that it's unsolvable, because if you bite off too much in your first go, then potentially that's going to get unstuck at a point as well. So something that's meaningful, important, and then unpacking that and to, I think what you're alluding to, looking at the workflow and the tasks and trying to recreate them in the context of the tooling capabilities that are available, be it agentic AI, more traditional AI, but not trying to start there, but instead trying to see what is the potential for these tools to drive the outcomes that the business is striving for in a more effective manner.
You mentioned there earlier that smaller organizations are integrating AI potentially much faster than larger organizations. And of course, that makes sense when you've to train in so many people. But in terms of, geography and culture, where does Ireland fit in terms of AI adoption? Like, are we laggards or are we actually doing pretty well?
I think we're well set up, is how I describe it at this stage. And when we look at our position, and the research bears this out actually, that our level of organization that is at the advanced stage of adoption is similar to what we're seeing in the UK, that top 10% is equivalent. I think when we look more broadly at where we're positioned from an Ireland standpoint, we have a lot of the ingredients to be exceptionally successful as a nation, as an economy in this space. We have, as we all know, a very educated, high skills, STEM literate workforce. We have our digital high-tech organizations very much embedded into our DNA here. And we have clearly a good framework and strategy from a national government perspective also. I think what is really important as we look ahead is how we execute next that agenda. That's at organizations across all facets of the economy and indeed the public sector as well, and really trying to put a lot of that, those good ingredients to work so that we can position ourselves to thrive in more substantially into the future. And we have the workforce that's literate. We have the next generation of leaders that come on board to help us grow the economy for not just near term, but for the sustained basis as well.
One aspect of the conversation about AI that comes up, and I think this speaks to the point about the low level of training out there as well, is people have been, I guess indulging might be a good word for it, in shadow AI and just making use of it in a sort of unofficial way within a company. We're very often hearing about the need for guardrails in AI. Is this a problem where people are embracing it in organizations, but without that sort of awareness that guardrails have to be in place for commercial and reputational reasons?
Yeah, I think shadow AI, it is a real phenomenon. Actually, that's borne out by the research, where it talks to the fact that 34% of employees are using their enterprise tools and capabilities, but there's another 30% who are essentially bringing their own AI tools to work. And that does point to, I suppose, a motivation and eagerness to get on and to bring these capabilities to bear in terms of how they do their day-to-day work. But as you're suggesting, it also introduces some risks and concerns, things like data leakage, things like transparency. They would be amplified without the right level of training and control around the adoption and usage of those tools. But I think the answer from an enterprise perspective isn't to try to stamp it all out. In the first instance, I think it's really trying to get the right emphasis, make sure that there's tooling with the appropriate rules available so that people don't feel the need to then self-procure. But that's something that's embedded within the organization's infrastructure, and they have that available to them in the estate. I think it's all about harnessing that enthusiasm and making sure that whatever use cases or opportunities are derived across the organization, that they're shared actually and championed across the patch.
And in looking at use cases, I mean, we don't need to name names here, but have any particular uses really stood out to you as being an example of an organization that really understands where the technology is going?
Yeah, I think there's multiple very strong examples locally and further afield across. I think I would suggest that there's leading organizations emerging across a whole variety of sectors. I think really the emphasis, however, is not, it's what I think is really interesting. It's not around how do we deploy this capability. It's whether we can make sure that we're using it for growth and for doing things that haven't been feasible today. I think and the report bears this out, a lot of Irish executives would still see cost and efficiency as the main target, the main goal in the context of AI and agentic. And that's really great from an efficiency standpoint, but misses a large part of the opportunity, which is around reinventing the work, but also the growth potential. And actually the model, I would suggest, that's twice as big as the cost opportunity that's on the table. And, there are some sectoral examples, if I kept it at that level, from a pharma and life sciences perspective, where, for instance, time and reach are being compressed and expanded. So new drugs are being brought to market much more time effectively than previously on the back of using AI. But in addition to that, the right therapies and treatments are being identified for subpopulations to ensure higher value treatments that's targeted to those individuals. And I think that's massively, massively beneficial, but also points to the growth potential and opportunity. Other examples, I think, that are emerging from a retailer consumer perspective. I think we've for a long time heard about personalization, but how that has taken effect has often been in here's what other customers similar to you have bought. I think we're now getting to the stage where we can actually put really specific individual propositions with the appropriate content together for individuals, and that will be a game shifter. In a similar vein, I think and the report talks to this as well, there's been a big shift across Europe over the last 12 months in terms of individuals who are purchasing via GEO or GenAI as a first means of recommendation as opposed to the broader internet. So that's moved from the sixth most popular recommendation engine to the first. And that's opening up a whole new landscape for organizations in which they can offer their services, they can open up broader ecosystem plays, broader propositions. I think that's a really exciting space that we'll see more of the course of the next 6 to 12 months.
Looking at the cost element, we're moving into the stage where, you know, the OpenAIs, the Anthropics, they're in the process of reimagining their billing model. Over the last few months, over the last few years, it has been very much use as much as possible, generate as much input as possible. And now we are seeing kind of an end point of that particular style of billing, that particular subscription model, just because so much material is being produced and often, you know, artificially engineered to produce. So how are organizations going to pivot from, okay, we're used to having X amount of output, the majority of which we know isn't particularly useful, to having to rein it back and focus on products or outputs that are actually useful to us?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's a real topical dynamic we've read and seen a lot about over the recent few weeks. And, you know, there is a bit of a paradox at the heart of this, whereby actually the unit cost on a token consumption basis has significantly decreased over the course of the last 10 months. However, for many enterprises, they're seeing their end of year, end of month AI bill go up. And a lot of that is down to the nature of agentic and how that has multiple more call outs to LLMs, multiple more inference and usage than simple just Gen AI applications or queries or prompts. And I think what it really boils back down to, and it's probably the key takeaway from our research as well, is that starting with the value in mind is absolutely critical. If you try to stitch AI into a process that has worked a specific way for a long time, it's likely that that's going to just drive more costs. It might improve the pace of execution. It will realistically probably run into a bottleneck at some stage along that way as well. And it will have obviously those new costs in terms of token usage and consumption associated with it. And that isn't really going to drive the ROI or the opportunity. It's the organizations that are taking a little bit of a step back, looking at the outcomes that they're trying to drive, and then redesigning the work with these capabilities in mind, agentic, Gen AI, other branches of automation and AI, then configuring the right approach for their organization to really drive those differentiated. They're the ones who will hopefully position themselves for longer term ROI. That's certainly what the research is suggesting.
Which requires, again, you know, whoever is advocating for Gen AI, whoever is advocating for agentic, etc., to have their own appreciation of what their costs, what their budgets will need to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think it's a cross-organization play. It's not, you know, one individual looking after each of those areas, but I think it's picking points that are strategically relevant for that enterprise, be it SME or large corporate, things that are material from a strategic impact perspective, and then using these tools to better improve the performance of a specific set of KPIs and driving that out. And one of the points that's really apparent is that it's back, I suppose, to the point that deploying AI is it's not straightforward. It requires multidisciplinary teams. It needs that level of integration from your people, your talent, your training side of the organization, obviously data, technology as well, and then those know the processes and how to execute in business context. It needs to all of those facets working together, and that'll only happen, that will only come to effect with the appropriate level of leadership and oversight. And that's where I think some organizations actually struggle as well. If they try to do this as a side of desk initiative as opposed to something that's led from the top.
Yeah, so it's a case of separate departments just having the conversation with themselves in the absence of that sort of unified management.
Yeah, absolutely. And linking it back to the strategic imperative and goals of the organization, that's absolutely key.
And that was Denis Hannigan, AI and Data Lead with Accenture, chatting with Niall Kitson.
This is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
That's it for our show this week. Do check out some other stories that we have online for you. We couldn't squeeze into the podcast, including...
Yeah, sure. We have a new survey on how IT professionals see managed service providers. Marie Boren talks a little bit more about how data centres are becoming an electoral issue. And Ireland's soon-to-be first woman in space, Dr. Nora Patton, adds brand ambassador to her list of achievements.
All of those stories and more online at techessential.ie. We're back again next Friday with a brand new show for you. In the meantime, do remember to share our podcast with a friend. Just tell them to look up Tech Radio Ireland on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever they get their podcasts. Until next time, from myself, Dusty, and from Niall Kitson, as always, have a great weekend. Take care.
Remember, you can get the latest Irish tech news with hourly updates, daily newsletters, and more at our website, techcentral.ie. Share the knowledge and invite a friend to listen. Search Apple, Spotify, or YouTube for Tech Radio Ireland. Tech Radio is produced by dustpod.io for techcentral.ie. From me, Artemis, live long and prosper.